It's Wednesday, November 2nd, and this is now on HNN.
Price stability is the responsibility of the Federal Reserve and serves as the bedrock of our economy.
The Fed unleashes another big rate hike, but hints at a pullback.
The public can feed into that if they have ideas.
Under its new closure plan, the Navy proposes defueling Red Hill, but keeps the empty fuel tanks in place.
Maui has 13 amendments.
Are you confused by all those charter questions on the ballot? Details ahead on what you need to know.
So now there's a camera somewhere in the ocean. If someone finds it, return to Kevin Frazier.
These stories plus entertainment tonight is in Waikiki. We'll take you behind the scenes coming up on This Is Now.
Stocks tumble after the Fed signals a rate hike yet again. The Dow ended the day down more than 500 points or 1.6%. The Federal Reserve announcing its toughest policy move since the 1980s. Another interest rate hike, the fourth consecutive one in an effort to cool down inflation.
Now, this is weighing down the stock market, spiking mortgage rates, and fueling recession fears. Mike Valerio has the latest from Los Angeles.
Hey, Ashley, in the headline from Fed Chair Jerome Powell, expect more rate hikes to come, and they may not slow down anytime soon. Amid a rebound in the economy, a hot labor market, and mortgage rates topping 7% for the first time since 2002, the Federal Reserve announcing a historic interest rate hike today, pushing up the cost of borrowing even further.
My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation.
The decision of a fourth consecutive hike of 0.75 of a percentage point is intended to keep the economy from overheating or cooling too dramatically and to tame inflation.
They'll raise the rate another quarter point, and then I think they'll stop and pause, take a look around, because they know that it takes a while for all these interest rate hikes to affect the economy and to slow inflation.
The interest rate hike will likely deepen the economic pain for millions of Americans at the same time as the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate is topping 7%.
Housing's going to struggle here over the next 12, 18 months, and I do expect some meaningful price declines.
A silver lining in the midst of all of this, the job market that remains tight. But for the consumer, the advice is to hold on.
If you are not able to bring your wages up, then you need to consume because basically your purchasing power is going down the line.
So Ashley, Jay Powell was asked at the end of his news conference about a soft landing for this economy, whether or not we can have all of these rising interest rates and not trigger a recession. He said that at this point may be out of the cards, Ashley.
Now, Mike, the big question, of course, is when is the pivot point?
Yeah, that is the $64,000 question. When are things going to start to slow down? And Ashley, we had a market rally after the written portion of Jay Powell's comments came out, saying that a slowdown may be prudent. It may be time to do that. But this is why we have the Fed chair answer questions from real humans after these announcements. Reporters started quizzing him on whether that was indeed the case. And he said, hey, we have to see if substantial inflation continues in this country, and it may not be prudent to slow down these rate hikes. That's when the market really started to go into a tailspin, with the Dow declining more than 500 points by the closing bell. So bottom line, Ashley, we're really going to have to wait for this meeting in December. These interest rate hikes are like taking pain medicine, taking an Advil or a Tylenol. You're in pain. The economy is in pain right now. It takes a little while for this medicine to work. So there's a danger that while we're waiting for the medicine to work, that there may be an overcorrection and they may not be able to pull back in time. So December is really the time to watch, Ashley.
All right, Mike Valerio joining us from Los Angeles this afternoon. Mahalo, Mike.
An alarming sign of rising tensions between North and South Korea. The North has fired nearly 24 missiles into the sea, according to officials in South Korea and Japan. One of the missiles splashed down in an area that's supposed to be a no-fire zone. South Korea responded with its own missile test while it continued joint military exercises with U.S. forces. And new details for you, new at noon, regarding that South Korea crowd crush that killed more than 150 people. 2 Americans were among the victims. Ivan Watson spoke to a close friend of one of them.
Everybody was very fond of Steven. Steven was the kindest person there ever was. He will be there for you. He was a good friend for everybody, a kind soul.
Ian Chang, a 21-year-old from Florida, is talking about his friend Stephen Blessy.
Let's meet with Steven.
The 2 American university students met here in South Korea during their semester abroad in Seoul.
This was one of his big adventures to come here by himself.
Show me some cooking skills.
The young Americans mixed classwork with exploring Korea.
Yeah, he definitely liked the food here, for sure.
The barbecue.
Korean barbecue.
And that included late nights out in Seoul's bars and nightclubs. That is until Saturday night, when everything went horribly wrong.
I didn't thought it was real, the whole thing, because I saw him that day, right? I just learned in the news that he passed away. Just, doesn't seem to be true.
The 2 Americans planned to meet here in Seoul's Itaewon district to celebrate Halloween. But that night, Korean authorities estimate more than 100,000 other people were also coming to party here.
At the beginning, we thought it was funny.
Stuck in the crowd, Anne-Lou Chevalier, a 22-year-old French exchange student, filmed herself with friends, at first laughing. But then she suddenly looks distressed. You were hurt. What happened to you?
At some point, I had no air, and we were so crushed to other people that I couldn't breathe at all, so I just passed out.
Unconscious?
Yeah, unconscious.
Bystanders pulled Chevalier limp out of the crowd. She was one of the lucky ones. This narrow alley was ground zero on Saturday night. Hundreds of partygoers collapsed into a deadly pileup here and began suffocating under the weight of the crowd. At least 156 people died. South Korea is still processing this staggering loss. Days later, lost belongings on display for grieving relatives to identify.
So I messaged Steven to tell him, hey, don't come to our place anymore.
On Saturday night, Ian Chang got to the crowded neighborhood first and warned his friend not to come. But the Atlanta native, who loved hip-hop and international travel, never answered. The next day, authorities identified Blessy and Ann Gieske, another American student from the same exchange program, as 2 of the many victims. Just weeks ago, this group of friends went on a weekend hiking trip together.
He was such a great person, like a great friend.
Stephen and Ian shared plans for the future, hopes and dreams that will now never be fulfilled.
I wish I could have made more memories with him, Yeah, I'm gonna miss him.
So, in addition to throwing their support behind a candidate, voters will also be answering some charter questions on the ballot for next week's election. Daryl, I don't think a lot of people even know what a charter is. What is it?
Charter is basically like the constitution for the county. Every county has its own, just like the state has its own constitution. They can't violate the federal constitution, but beyond that, they do a lot of rules of how government should work.
All right, so break it down for us. What is on this year's ballot? And I know it's a little confusing for some.
The confusion really comes when you ask the question, why? Like, why do we have to make this change, right? Most of the time, the language in these things is pretty straightforward. You can tell what they're trying to accomplish. But if you start asking why, you could start getting really confused, particularly in the Maui area. Maui has 13 amendments, and 11 of them came from the Maui Charter Commission, which went through this very elaborate process, ultimately proposing 11 amendments. The county council proposed 2 of its own. So if you get a voter guide from the Charter Commission, it doesn't have the last 2. So the Elections Division website has a nice list and a nice summary of all of them. In Honolulu, which is our biggest county, where there's more people are going to have to be making these decisions, there's 4. And they're all pretty straightforward. It's, again, the why that gets a little confusing. The why do we need to do this? For example, the first one is pretty straightforward. It doubles the amount of money going into an affordable housing fund, and that's specifically for housing for people making, I think, is less than 80% of the median income, so workforce level housing. The second one is about adding diversity to the Planning Commission. There's been a critique that the Planning Commission is too heavily involved in the construction industry. There's trade union representatives, developers, and they are too prone to build and less likely to put constraints on properties. For example, those that are threatened by shoreline sea level rise. And so this would specifically require Native Hawaiian cultural practitioner, land use planning experts, land development construction expert, and an expert in climate change and sea level rise. The other one would expand this clean water preserve. This is very technical, but it's logical. Right now, they get money from the tax revenue to buy land, but they don't have any money to actually maintain or improve that land. And so this would allow that same fund to be used for those lands. So it doesn't increase cost to anybody. The last one, it gives the Office of Council Services, which are the people that basically provide support to the city council. It would give them a place in the charter, which essentially makes them permanent. But the interesting nuance there is that it also says that the lawyers hired by the council are the council's lawyers, which separates that from the corporation council, who is a mayor's appointee. There's been suspicions that the corporation council might be in conflict of interest when it advises the council, and that played a role in the Kealoha payoff scandal and so on and so on. So there's a long backstory to that one, but that basically would establish the office that already exists into the charter.
Real quickly, so this is a lot of diverse amendments here. Where can people go to educate themselves? I know you did a great story yesterday. It's published right now on our H&N digital platforms. Is there any other resources out there?
Like I said, the Elections Division, State Elections Division has, if you Google 2022 ballot questions, state of Hawaii, boom, up comes a website, and it's got every one of the county's amendments. This is the only place I've been able to find that has everything all in one place.
And I guess you sort of broke it down in explaining what a charter is, but really break it down how important and why people should care about these. They seem nuancey, but it is important to the overall governance,
well,
right?
Also, there are a number of amendments here that would provide for more open government. And Maui, they're voting on whether they should have a Department of Housing instead of Human Services and Housing, where people feel like housing has been treated like a stepchild. Maui has a huge affordable housing problem. So this is something that voters could actually do that makes a positive change. A couple of the other counties have good government things, more ethics review, beefing up ethics commissions, banning conflicts of interest. So it's basically how the government operates, which affects literally everyone in a county.
Most important thing, vote. You just got to get out there and vote.
You still got a little time, but at this point, don't mail it in, drop it off.
Yes. All right, Daryl Huff, thank you so much for your expertise. Looking forward to seeing you on our election night coverage as well.
That'll be fun.
All right.
The Navy says it has drained more than 960,000 gallons of fuel from the pipelines that connect Red Hill to Pearl Harbor, and officials say when the fuel is gone, they plan to leave the 20 massive tanks underground. Mahealani Richardson has the story.
The Navy says the Red Hill tanks could have some sort of beneficial reuse, but offered no concrete specifics. Up to 20,000 gallons of fuel spilled during last year's fuel leaks, and 4,000 gallons is still unaccounted for. Now, the Navy promised to remediate the site by digging out fuel-tainted soil and using new technology, but made no promises to remove all of the contamination after years of spills. As it tries to shut down Red Hill, the Navy is seeking approval to leave the 20 underground fuel tanks in place after the fuel is taken out. Each pill-sized tank can hold 12.5 million gallons of fuel and are the size of Aloha Tower.
We are recommending the safest and most protective way forward, and that is leaving the tanks in place. When we look at the option of removing the tanks, it puts at serious risk the environment.
During our media tour earlier this year of the Red Hill shaft, our crew could smell fuel in the air. Once the facility is closed, will the fuel smells linger, and will you remove all contaminated soil from the site?
So as we ventilate, it will clean the air of those contaminants. It also will remove any sort of scent. It is usually a carbon filtration system.
Navy leaders say they need to study the area and that there would be long-term monitoring. Do you think it's possible to remove all contaminated soil from the site? And how much soil do you think is contaminated?
So I don't have an estimate because, so I have an estimate based on over 4,000 gallons relative to what we had for the May and the November incident. Prior to that, I don't, it would be speculative.
The state health department says any closure plan must guarantee that the Navy will never reuse the Red Hill tanks for fuel or for other substances that threaten our aquifer. 14 of the 20 tanks have fuel in them. A joint task force is working to drain fuel from the pipelines and then must complete a series of repairs before defueling. Defueling is expected to last until mid-2024, while closing down the facility is expected to last until 2027. Navy engineers say some contaminated soil has already been removed with an excavator about 40 feet down, but they didn't say how much. Leaders say the community will be involved in deciding what the site will be used for in the future and that it would not store contaminants. Meanwhile, the Sierra Club says that given the tanks were built in 1943 and are dilapidated, they don't see any beneficial reuse. Mahealani Richardson, Hawaii News Now.
Thank you very much, Maheo, for staying on top of that story. All right, we want to take you live outside to somewhere different right now. Look at that, Seattle, Washington. Guess how cold it is. I won't make you do too many guesses. 45.
Oh, brr.
Whoa, yeah. That's compared to our 79 degrees right here on Oahu. Those winds, they'll be changing a bit. That's going to change your weather. Here's Guy Hoggy with your first alert.
It's going to be a little bit more sticky starting tomorrow, but because the winds will run pretty swift, should not be much of an issue. And then on Monday, that's when trade winds come back in. So your 7-day forecast is looking pretty good. Granted, we are expecting more showers starting this afternoon through tomorrow. And the showers will favor windward areas. But because the winds will be a little on the breezy side, some of those showers will be moving into leeward areas. And also because of those breezy winds, the rainfall accumulation should be limited. Flooding should not be an issue.
Oh, the internet is abuzz about this first story in our From the Feed segment. Yeah, they're thinking about charging for those little check marks that show verified Twitter accounts as much as $8 a month. That's according to Elon Musk, of course, the new owner of Twitter. This comes after many verified users, including author Stephen King, blasted an earlier report of a fee of up to $20 a month. Musk responded to King saying, "Twitter needs to pay the bills somehow." That was my Elon Musk impression there. And they can't rely entirely on advertisers. You know, is this really what Twitter was for?
Yeah, that's
Charging
really
people for
annoying.
that? I think that's going to limit people's expression, in my personal opinion, when you have to start paying to use a service like that. It's supposed to be about a flow of information. I can go on this rant for hours. What else did you find, Ash?
So a scientific study out of the UK is generating quite a buzz. So get this, the London-based study, which sought to prove that bees like to play, gave a group of bumblebees two options. So they had a clear, straight path to food, or one filled with miniature wooden balls. Now, the bees not only preferred the pint-sized play area, most stopped to play with the balls, rolling them around. Some tumbled with the playthings up to 44 times a day. So not only did the research suggest the bees found the playtime rewarding, the study also found that younger bees rolled more balls than older bees, which mirrors the human behavior of playful young children.
Man, I'm an adult, and I gotta say, I miss those ball pits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it reminds me of. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. All right. One more story.
So Adele has some news for us. Apparently, we've been saying her name wrong all these years. So while many pronounce it, like I just said, Adele, the singer says it's actually Adele. Adele. So she noted the correction during a recent Q&A session when a woman asking about her songwriting used the correct pronunciation. And the event was held to celebrate her new music video for the song I Drink Wine. Her Las Vegas residency, Weekends with Adele, starts November 18th.
Well, thank you, Ashley. Who knew, really? Yeah. At least she wasn't. I mean, my name gets mispronounced all the time.
Yeah, I mean, people have just said it so many times, she probably just
roll
doesn't
with
correct.
it.
Yeah.
All right, entertainment tonight. The planet's most watched entertainment show is right here on Oahu, filming in Waikiki at the Sheraton, and our Billy V met up with his old friends to see what it was all about.
Thank you very much. And Entertainment Tonight is in the house. Yay!
Back together again.
Yes. Nice to have you
Did you
here.
miss us?
I did.
Okay, good.
You know, there's people that have been out here. They've been kind of looking at what you guys have been doing.
Yeah.
They're going, oh, wow, they're here. So, first of all, you've been to Maui recently.
I was in Maui, spent the weekend in Maui, and it was fantastic. Can I just tell you, Mama's Fish House? Good goodness, it was fantastic.
Okay, so you've been to so far?
Kauai, Maui, and Oahu.
Okay, so next trip we'll get you to another different island. In
Hold
the
on, how
meantime,
many islands have you done?
Same.
Yeah.
But she's been to Waianae. She went to the West Side, Best Side.
I did. That's exactly what I was told when I went. That is West Side, Best Side. Nicole Scherzinger and her family, I got to spend time with them this summer there because we renovated her grandparents' house for another show that I do for CBS, Secret Celebrity Renovation. And when I tell you, honey, the spirit was all up and around in that production. It was so much fun. I love that family. And I love the West Side.
How was the show going?
The show is fantastic. I mean, look, I get to do it with someone who I love, is a friend who's also like my big sister, who gets all my, well, who also, no, let me be honest now. There are days that we want to kill each other. Let's be honest.
Well, okay, Sunrise, same thing.
Right,
Okay.
you get it, you understand it, but it is really cool. You got to have that feeling. It's like,
this guy, okay, he behaving?
I mean, he never behaves. But it's the reason why I do love him, because he's so hard-headed, and I just throw up my hands sometimes. And that's what the viewers do, too. They tell me, they're like, Nichelle, we're frustrated with you. We love him, but geez, oh, Pete. And that's exactly what we do. Can I tell you what he did?
What did he do?
So we're out paddleboarding just the other day, and he was talking so much smack, like, oh, I'm the king of the water, I'm King Triton, and all of a sudden kicks his camera, his paddleboard camera off. We can't find it. They're looking out there for 3 hours. So now there's a camera somewhere in the ocean. If someone finds it, return to Kevin Frazier.
Jason Momoa, if you're out there, Aquaman, go find it, okay?
Please go find it.
Now, you guys are going to be here all week long, so everybody should be watching 6:30 KGMB. And you guys you're going to Kulo Ranch?
yes, I'm so excited about that. Hanging out at Kualoa Ranch, we have a lot of water sports. You get to see who really is the king of the water and who isn't. That'll be a lot of fun.
Just ask who won the paddleboard race. Just ask who won the paddleboard
Was it a race?
race.
Was it a race?
It was a race.
Okay, they had to pull you out there.
Make sure that you are watching, okay? Kevin Frazier,
control.
Nichelle Turner, Entertainment Tonight, 6:30 p.m. on
We love
KGMB.
you. Thank you for having us again.
Yeah, let's go.
They're not having any fun at all,
Yeah.
are they?
John, I will say there has never been a day working with you where I felt like I've wanted to kill you.
Oh,
You're
thank
just the
you.
best.
I appreciate that. Well, one more story then?
Do we have time?
Yes. Oh, no, we don't. Starbucks has new cups. Yeah. See, now you want to kill me.
end.
Yeah. Starbucks has new cups. Here's the new holiday cups inspired by the season of caring, blah, blah, blah. All right, that's it for This Is Now. Ashley's back first at 4 on KHNL. You guys have a great rest of your day. We're
See
almost
ya.
through this work week. Bye-bye.